the Newcastle United 2022-2023 season review. A season like no other. Newcastle United are back in the big time. Champions League football returns to St James's Park. Many highs throughout the season, which every fan will remember. Sit back and relax as you watch the Newcastle United season review of the 2022-23 season. So lads, back for another video today. This is the big video, the Newcastle United season review. I've been waiting to do this for ages and the time has finally come. I am so happy with the outcome this season. We're literally going over every single game, pushing through absolutely everything, and it still hasn't sunk in yet for me, but anyways, we'll have to get in the video now. Make sure to leave a like, boys, subscribe to the channel. This video is going to get a lot of work and effort put into it, so if you could give a like and subscribe to the channel, that would mean a lot. And Newcastle United made some successful signings before the season started. Matt Targett on a permanent deal, Sven Botman and Nick Pope. So the season is back underway in the Premier League. War flags are back and Newcastle United had a massive game to start off the season back at St James's Park versus Nottingham Forest. Great win, a 2-0 win, an absolute thunderbolt from Fabian Schär, and then Callum Wilson wrapped it up in the 80th minute to make it 2-0. Following the next week, we went away to Brighton at the Amex Stadium, a 0-0 draw. Nick Pope masterclass, and we took the draw. Probably deserved to lose the game, but they didn't take the chances, and Nick Pope was absolutely brilliant in that game. One of the best games in the Premier League last season, not just for Newcastle, but in the whole Premier League. Newcastle United versus Manchester City. Starting off with Ilkay Gundogan scoring in the first 5 minutes, and then a response in the 25th minute as Miguel Almiron scored with his fucking thigh. Next up, Callum Wilson wrapped up just before half time to make it 2-1. And let's just speak about that Kieran Trippier free kick. Absolutely sensational, right in the top corner, limbs in the whole stadium, as Newcastle United were 3-1 up against the champions in arguably the most amazing moment in that time for Newcastle fans for a long time. Man City did bring it back though to make it 3-3 goals from Erling Haaland and Bernardo Silva. But ultimately, a 3-3 draw against one of the best teams in the world. You do not complain. Next up was the start of our Carabao Cup journey, a trip to Tranmere. Tranmere Rovers, we went 1-0 down, which was very scary, but we pulled it back with goals from Jamal Lascelles and Chris Wood. Two players that didn't really feature in the season, but made a massive income in our Carabao Cup successful throughout the season. And just before we played Wolverhampton Wanderers, Newcastle United broke their transfer record, signing striker Sweden Alexander Isak. And then a 1-1 draw with Wolverhampton Wanderers. I actually watched this game on holiday, the first ever time I've done this. Watched the game not in my room, away on holiday, and luckily I was watching it with a Newcastle fan. We drew 1-1, could have made it 2-1 at the end with that crossbar hit by Eric Anderson, but ultimately a 1-1 draw isn't the worst result. Now then, that Liverpool game, 2-1 defeat, referee 98th minute, absolutely shambles it was. 98th minute conceding when there was plus 5 minutes at a time. Now it doesn't look too bad, but in that moment I was thinking that that point could be the difference. Transfer window wrapped up. Newcastle United were back at St James's Park on a Saturday at 3 o'clock. Crystal Palace came to town and it was a 0-0 draw. We scored a goal perfectly fine, and the referee gave it as a Crystal Palace free kick for Mitchell pushing Joe Willock, which I still can't get my head round. Everyone in the stadium was flabbergasted, but a 0-0 draw. And then a 1-1 draw against Bournemouth. Obviously it was Eddie Howe's first time playing Bournemouth since he left them back in 2020. We drew 1-1, a Billing goal, and then Alexander Isak from the penalty spot. Really good penalty, but unfortunately wasn't enough to pick up 3 points. In September as well, Alexander Isak got a massive injury on international duty, which sent him out all the way till January, and Newcastle United made a couple of free signings in Lois Karius. October came around the corner and Newcastle United were on fire. Starting off the month with a 5-1 win at Craven Cottage against Fulham. Goals from Callum Wilson, Sean Longstaff and Miguel Almiron. A first win in 6 games for Newcastle. We had to bounce back, had to be picking up points, and we did in a massive win away from home. Following the next week, Newcastle United scored more than the week before, not 4, 5 against Brentford. Bruno Guimaraes started off the goal with a beautiful header, and then just after, an open goal for Jacob Murphy to get his first goal of the season. An Ivan Toney penalty made it 2-1, but Bruno Guimaraes showed his magic yet again with a beautiful goal from outside the box. Not long left and Almiron wrapped it up to make it 4-1. A poor pass back from Pinnock round the keeper and he couldn't miss. And then an own goal by Pinnock with a Joe Linton cross which made it 5-1 to Newcastle United. Now it was Manchester United at Old Trafford. I did go to this game but I was sat in the home end. It was a weird experience. I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to go on the away end. I was in Manchester for my mate's 21st birthday and it was impossible for a go. There was 6 of us there and we just couldn't get all tickets, so I went to the game obviously with a channel and whatnot to up the boys. But a 0-0 draw, controversial penalty decisions, a Ronaldo goal and that, but arguably a draw was fair. A midweek game against Everton which see Newcastle United pick up a massive 1-0 win. They're the type of wins that you need in the season where not the best games and whatnot, but you pick up them points that you need. A 1-0 win with an Almiron, lovely little scoop goal from outside the box, beautiful goal, and Newcastle United were pushing up the table. Then away against Tottenham, a massive game, both teams going for that top 4 this season, and Newcastle United were 2-0 up in the first half. Goals from Callum Wilson and Miguel Almiron. Harry Kane pulled one back just after half time, but Newcastle United were resilient in that game, held on, defended for their lives, and Newcastle United picked up a massive 3 points which took them into the top 4. A week later and it was party time in the two, and it was the Halloween weekend, but Newcastle United put 4 past Aston Villa. Brilliant game it was. Callum Wilson was on fire just before the World Cup. Gareth Southgate was in the stands, and arguably that game got him that call up to Qatar. Goals from Callum Wilson, a penalty and a header, a goal from Joe Linton, and then Almiron scored a beautiful long shot. November was obviously a month where us Newcastle fans were gutted about. There was only going to be 2 games this month with the World Cup, Qatar. Newcastle United started off the month with a massive 4-1 win against Southampton at the St Mary's. A beautiful win. The boys were on fire that day. Goals from Almiron, Chris Wood, Joe Willock and Bruno. Newcastle United were back in Carabao Cup action as we played Crystal Palace, and it was a bit of a nice game for me. I took my girlfriend to our first ever football game and she didn't see a goal unfortunately, but Newcastle United went through on penalties as we beat Crystal Palace 3-2. Nick Pope with 3 penalty saves and Newcastle United progressed into the 5th round of the Carabao Cup. Just before the Chelsea game, the day before, Newcastle United had a sweet month in the awards. Manager of the month, goal of the month and player of the month. Eddie Howe didn't lose a game, only due to Manchester United. Almiron got player of the month, I think, for scoring 6 goals in 6 games, and he got goal of the month for that long shot or volley against Fulham. Then obviously in that game against Chelsea, Newcastle United played off the park. We deserved to be 2-0 up in the first half, 3-0 up. We just couldn't get that goal. Chelsea brought on the pressure, and then an absolute screamer by Joe Willock nearly took the fucking goal out of the stadium, man. It was absolutely unreal. Beautiful goal, and Newcastle United went into the World Cup break on massive highs, sitting 3rd in the Premier League. Just before Christmas, we are now in December, and Newcastle United had a Carabao Cup game against Bournemouth. A game where it could go either way at St James's Park. It was a really dull, boring game, but Newcastle United got that win. It was a scrappy game. It was an own goal by Adam Smith, but Newcastle United got through to the 5th round. I did say 5th round before for the Crystal Palace game. The 5th round of the Cup, which scored at the quarterfinals, and it was a massive test for Newcastle United in the Carabao Cup. Newcastle United were back in the Premier League, back in Premier League action on Boxing Day after the World Cup break. Back, and we were at the King Power Stadium, Newcastle United versus Leicester. Obviously easy win for the two, and we were 3-0 up after 32 minutes. Chris Wood scoring a penalty within 3 minutes, Almiron scoring straight after, and then a Joe Linton bullet header to make it 3-0, and Newcastle United just played them off the park that day, and arguably that's why Leicester got relegated. New Year's Eve now, I wanted Newcastle to win this game so bad. I don't like Leeds. I was going out obviously for New Year's, and Newcastle United had a dull performance against Leeds. It was a really horrible day at St James's for the last day of 2022, but we picked up a 0-0 draw. Now it really happened, and Leeds was just scummy and scruffed their way through the game, and arguably you have been relegated for a reason. You weren't good enough, but we didn't pick up the points on that day. January was here now, and obviously that means the transfer window is open. Newcastle United were in a really good position in the Premier League. Who we're going to bring in, we'll have to wait and see throughout the month. But starting off the month with a 0-0 draw against Arsenal. Quite possibly a great result. Arsenal were top of the league at the time, bossing the league. They were top of the league by a couple of points, and I think since that point on, they weren't really the same. Eddie Howe had a bit of a row with Arteta, and there was a lot of tension there in that game, but we were buzzing to get that point away from home, a stadium we never win at, ever. First game of 2023, started at a high. From a nice high to probably one of the lowest points in the season, but it worked out probably in the end. Sheffield Wednesday in League One beat Newcastle United in the FA Cup. A really disappointing performance. I remember it was on BBC One, and we were just so disappointed. We went 2-0 down. We were playing a poor team. Bruno brung one back, but everyone knows about this game. That Chris Wood miss. It nearly went out the fucking stadium, man. Fucking, oh my God. It went so high. It was absolutely ridiculous. But Newcastle United were out the FA Cup, same as last season. Well, the season before, against Cambridge. League One team, knocked out. Hopefully we'll have a better FA Cup journey this season, but did it work out better for Newcastle? I think so. Eddie Howe would probably not been happy about that result, and we had a massive quarter-final on Tuesday night against Leicester City at home at St James's, and that game really showed it. We give everything in that game, and we had to, knowing that the fans were going to be fuming after that loss against Sheffield Wednesday. We had to win that game against Leicester, and we did. Big Dan Burn. At that time, Dan Burn was bossing it. He's had a lot of slate towards the end of the season, but he was bossing it then, and the only thing he didn't have on his Newcastle tally was a goal, and he got that goal, and a really important goal, sending Newcastle United to a semi-final, and obviously Joe Linton scored. It was brilliant. That game was brilliant. The scores were out for that game, I remember. One of the best games I had this season, I think. We're just really good in that game, and now, honestly, you know that we were going to a semi-final. I've never seen that in my lifetime. I've never seen a semi-final in my lifetime as a Newcastle United fan. I've seen quarters, just not semis. Absolutely buzzing. Newcastle United versus Fulham. We won the game in the 90th minute, but I don't have a good memory of that game. I remember I was so hungover watching that game. I went out on the Saturday with the boys and that. I was trying to do dry January. Didn't happen. And then I went to the game still in my night out clothes. I was an absolute scruff that day, but Alexander Isak saved the day with that 90th minute header. Couldn't miss. And obviously Meatball scored the penalty, but got disallowed for 2 touches. Wallace's father had a bet on that, so I put it on in the stadium. It obviously didn't come through, but 1-0 win against Fulham, buzzing. A week later, Newcastle United were away against Crystal Palace. Played them twice this season, 2 games 0-0. What do you think the score was? It was a 0-0 at Selhurst Park. Arguably should have lost the game. Nick Pope made an save of the season for me. I don't know how he didn't get save of the season for the save. He got save of the month, but honestly, this save was absolutely ridiculous. Like, absolutely unreal. The reaction to just tip that over the ball was absolutely unreal. And it was a point on the road, and I think after that game we were like 24 games unbeaten, which was absolutely unreal. The Carabao journey is back. The first leg of the semi-final away at St Mary's, Southampton. They actually beat Man City. How? I couldn't tell you, but Newcastle United got a very lucky draw getting Southampton, especially having the first game away. And if we won that game, I was convinced we were going through. I actually booked Wembley and I actually booked my hotel, my train before we even kicked the ball against Southampton, and luckily the first game was a 1-0 win with Joe Linton. It should have been about fucking 10. Honestly, I think we should have been 1-0 up in the first. I think Joe Linton scored. He missed a sitter in the second half, and then he got one back towards the end. Adam Armstrong scored, but he was offside, and Newcastle United went in with the advantage. Just before the second leg, Newcastle United announced 2 signings at the club: Anthony Gordon and Harrison Ashby. Harrison Ashby actually hasn't played a game yet for Newcastle, as Anthony Gordon has came in and he's been good in games, but not the player we probably expecting and we're expecting a bit more from him. But he came in flying colours, absolutely buzzing to be in Newcastle, and we started off, they were announced before the Southampton game and whatnot, and that was the big one for me. I've never been so nervous going to a game, lads. Like, that game had everything. The scores beforehand, Shaq was DJing before, getting the atmosphere building, and at that time in my lifetime, the 31st January was the best atmosphere I've witnessed completely. Before a game, during the game, and right at the start, Geordie boy Sean Longstaff puts Newcastle United ahead to make it 1-0, 2-0 on aggregate. Absolutely, honestly, the limbs in the stadium was absolutely crazy. And then guess what? He makes it 2-0, 3-0 altogether, and pretty much wrapped the game up from there. There was pyros in the stadium. It was absolutely unreal. Newcastle United were going to Wembley. February was here, and Newcastle United start off the month with a 1-1 draw against West Ham. Callum Wilson scored in the first 2 minutes. A straight reaction after Joe Willis' goal was disallowed in the first 40 seconds. Lucas Paquetá made it 1-1, and that really happened in the game. It was a half-5 kick-off. It was a weird game, and Newcastle United didn't really do much in that game. But a 1-1 draw, still unbeaten. But we had to be picking up points as the top 4 race was getting a lot more tighter. Bournemouth away, it was our last away game before Wembley. Newcastle United should be winning this game, and we drew 1-1. Senesi scored in the first 30 minutes, I think it was, and then Almond just before half time made a 1-1. A nice little finish it was, and I think that put him on to 10 goals for the Premier League season. Should be winning games like that. It was Eddie Howe's first time back at the Vitality Stadium, back where his whole life pretty much is, and it was a disappointing performance. Should be winning them games, but we were still unbeaten in the Premier League until the week after. One of the lowest points I've felt in the season. I think if Wembley wasn't the week after, I don't know. Newcastle United unbeaten run ended with a 2-0 defeat against Liverpool. Goals from Cody Gakpo and Darwin Núñez, but Nick Pope, he got that red card, didn't he? And in that moment, like the second I seen him grab the ball, that was it. I couldn't get my head around it. I really couldn't. It was, honestly, it was a sad moment. It really was. Not just for Newcastle fans, for him. He's been one of the best players this season, and he doesn't get a play at Wembley. Do you know what I mean? It was so disappointing. But the unbeaten streak was gone. Newcastle United got beat, and one of them games, wasn't it? For me, one of the highlights of the season, even though the result didn't go our way, Wembley, Trafalgar Square Saturday. I was so happy going to London. It was nice. It was technically my first away game. Like, it was. Train down on the Saturday. I went by myself. Do you know what I mean? None of the boys went, so I had to go by myself in the hotel and that. I got mortal and that. Went to Trafalgar Square. Met Rob. Met the Magpie Channel. Met some Emmy. I met loads of people down there. It was class. It was unreal. Trafalgar Square. And then I was in a pub. With Rob and all his pals who I spoke to before. And then next thing you know, I've woke up in my hotel room. I don't remember a thing. I really don't. That's what the Geordie boys do. I woke up a bit hungover. Breakfast orders out, and we're here for the big day. I got Wembley nice and early. The walk up Wembley way, had a drink and that. It was quite nice too, because even I walked around, people asking for photos and that. It was one of the best weekends as a Newcastle fan. But before the result, it was like the whole team and club were united back together. Like, I went to the pub. If the lads are watching this, like, I got recognised right outside the fan zone. It was got a photo and that. I was like, "Oh, where you going, boys?" They're like, "Oh, we're going to a pub up here." I'm like, "I'll come here." And like, I think it made their trip. I'm not saying it did, but they were really happy. I got them in the vlog and that. And I went to the pub with them, had a nice drink and that. Mate, I seen people in the pub and that, and they were like, "Binksy, you were more than Trafalgar Square, you." But just that whole experience was absolutely unreal. And then getting at the stadium, my ticket was 2 hours before kick-off, so I go into the stadium and I had a look about Wembley and whatnot. It was unreal. It really was an unreal venue, unreal stadium. But then obviously the result didn't go our way, as Newcastle United got beat 2-0 to Manchester United with goals from Casemiro and Rashford. The first time in my lifetime I cried at a football match. And I remember this old man, and this will stay with me for life, patted on the shoulder. He went, "Young'un, I've seen it all. I've seen the highs and seen the lows. It'll not be the first, and it'll not be the last." And I went, you completely agree. You know what I mean? Like, it's true. It's not going to be the first final we've been in. It's not going to be the last final we're ever going to be in. I think it was just so hard because, on a personal note, I was going through a bit of shit prior to Wembley and whatnot, and I think everything just hit us in that moment. It was a shit time. It really, really was. I went back to the hotel and I was just on FaceTime with the boys, had some food and that. But that whole weekend, that whole experience about London, it was unreal. It really, really was. It was the first time I've been to London as well. It was class. It really, really was. But shame about the result. And then I was just scared in case that was going to affect our season. And next week we had Man City. So March hit. As I said there, Man City, Etihad Stadium. Newcastle United got beat 2-0. Goals from Bernardo Silva and Foden. It was a weird game. Like I said, I was still going through like a lot of shit then. So if you're quite new, not quite regular at the channel and whatnot, I actually didn't do a video. It was the first time I've not done a match reaction video or done something for a game in years. It really, really was. And I remember I wasn't at it. Newcastle got beat, and I was going through a bit of shit. But one of them also now, Man City played off the part of that game, didn't really create any chances, and I was just scared in case it was going to affect our season. A week later came, Newcastle United had to win this game. Wolves at home. Wolves were sitting above the relegation zone, still could go down, but Newcastle United picked up 3 points. We went 1-0 up with a beautiful header from Alexander Isak. Brilliant goal, but in the second half we conceded. Kieran Trippier made a mad slide tackle and then an open goal for Hang-Wei Chan, but in the 80th minute Almiron scored to make it 2-1 and we had to win that game. It was a must win, and with Bruno passing that game, screaming and that, we needed that. And next week we had a big game Friday night, and I generally think this quite possibly could be one of my favourite games of the season. Like, I'll do a little thing at the end, but Nottingham Forest away, obviously I didn't go, but I think that game, it was just mad. Obviously beforehand, John Joe Shelby joined them on deadline day in January. He started that game, putting in some heavy challenges, but Newcastle United picked up a massive 3 points. 90th minute goal from Isak from the penalty spot. Scored a beautiful goal in the first half, just before the end of the half. But that game for me, it was unreal. It really, really was. It was one of them games where it was just, you put your hands together, and it was unreal. It really, really was. Limbs in your way in and whatnot, absolutely unreal. And that was the end for March, as we had our final international duty of the season. April now, and it was a really, really busy month for Newcastle United. All the games that were meant to be played around December time for the World Cup got put into April. Had a lot of games during the week, but we started off the month with quite possibly one of the biggest and best results I've seen at St James's Park. Revenge, as you could say. Newcastle United versus Manchester United. From the expected goals, Newcastle United should have won that game 5-0. 5-0. We won it 2. Joe Willock and Callum Wilson scored. In that atmosphere, it was absolutely unreal. That first goal, the moment the ball went in the net, it was relief. Newcastle United had to win that game, and it was just a weight lift off our shoulders in that stadium. We had to win that game, and Newcastle United did. A massive 2-0 win. Away to the Hammers now. Newcastle United 5, West Ham 1. A massive. Yeah, again, I'm saying it for every game. Massive result, and I'm sitting there going, like, because I wasn't really thinking Champions League still, like, during the season, and it was sort of this time now going, are we really going to be getting Champions League football? But Newcastle United was sublime in that game. Goal by Callum Wilson in the first half, then Joe Linton, Kurt Zouma scored, but then we bounced back. Jacob Murphy won the ball straight after half time, passed it to Callum Wilson, open goal. Fourth goal, Isaac, hands on hip, cool as ice, and then a final goal by Joe Linton. Got 2 in that game. Beautiful result, and Newcastle United were staying in that top 4 to stand. And for me, this is the game where I sat there and I realised that Champions League could be a realistic target for Newcastle United this season. A realistic where next season we could be going to some of the biggest and best stadiums in the world. Brentford versus Newcastle away from home. We were 1-0 down at half time. We had a penalty saved bit with Nick Pope, but we were awful in that first half. I mean, we were absolutely shocking. But second half game, Joe Linton scored, and then a couple of minutes later, Isaac with a beautiful goal. Like, them are the goals that don't get spoken about. Curl, top corner, lovely celebration, and Newcastle United. Yeah, I think everyone's seen it. And Eddie Howe as well. He doesn't really react when we scored. He reacted when we scored that goal with Isaac, and I think it sunk in a bit for him as well, knowing that Champions League could be a realistic for Newcastle United next season. A low point now, Newcastle United versus Aston Villa, a 3-0 defeat. The worst performance this season, without a shadow of a doubt. Absolutely, really disappointing. And I remember I went on a bit of a rant. I think that's what people like us for, and I don't like that, because people go, oh, Binks, you ran screaming and that way. That's what people know me as, and then I done it, and I get loads of views. You know what I mean? I'm like, in fuck's sake, all the good work I do when Newcastle win gets our views, and then when we get beat and I'm fucking gone out, I get loads of views. It's shit how it works. But luckily that result didn't affect our season, because the week later something special happened. It was a busy day for me. I was at Leeds for my mate's 21st, Friday, Saturday. Newcastle played the Sunday, and I get trained back early in the morning. Kick-off was at 2 o'clock. I got back and I could literally get in, get sorted, and I was straight out the door to St James's Park. Leaving the house, did I expect Newcastle United to win 6-1? Not a chance. Best game this season? It's my second favourite. Second favourite game I've been to this season at St James's Park. Honestly, unreal. Jacob Murphy, first minute, really good goal. Joe Linton's goal for me is so underrated. The touch to go round the keeper and put it at the back of the net, limbs, it really was. And then Jacob Murphy, like, honestly, thunderbolt of a goal. 9 minutes in, Newcastle United were 3-0 up, and it didn't feel real. Me and Mark next to us in the stadium couldn't believe it. Newcastle United, Joe Willock's on the ball, and quite possibly the assist of the century. I've seen nothing like it. Isaac one-on-one, 4-0, and we were dreaming. 19 minutes in, only for 2 minutes later to make it 5-0. 5-0 in 21 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I generally thought I was in dreamland. I really did. I thought that weekend away with the boys just fucked us up. It did fuck us up, but not enough to see Newcastle United win 6-1 against Tottenham. In that game as well, I think people forget, if Tottenham won, they would be on the same points as Newcastle. We would have one game in hand and would have been on the same point as Tottenham. Harry Kane pulled one back, but Callum Wilson made a 6-1 in the second half. In Newcastle United, we're in dreamland. 4 days later, away at Goodison Park, a massive one. I think the game was on Amazon. I think it was. It was a really good game. Newcastle United won 4-1. unreal. It really, really was. And I think after that game, we were looking like, right, we are gonna do it, aren't we? We really are gonna do it. Everton's a tough place again. We don't really win at Everton at their stadium. Normally it's a tough place for Newcastle, and we played them off the park. It was absolutely phenomenal. Goals by Callum Wilson, Joe Linton and Jacob Murphy. But let's speak about that Alexander Isak run. It didn't even get given as his assist because it deflected off Tarkowski, didn't it? But quite possibly the way he ran, it was stunning. Like, honestly, we're lucky to have him. 63 million. Bargain, absolutely bargain. Newcastle were flying at that point in the top 4 and no one was stopping me. Until the final game of the month, where I thought, fucking hell, after half time it was a bit like, we'll win all these games. We'll be Tottenham 6-1, Man United 2-0, and we were 1-0 down against Southampton at St James's, which felt surreal. Bottom of the league they were. We could have got them relegated on that day if results went they not their way, and they couldn't get relegated even if they did win or lost or whatever happened. They couldn't get relegated on that day, simple as official. But Newcastle United pulled the bat in the second half. 2 goals by Callum Wilson and an own goal. They're the wins that you've got to like push for and get in. Newcastle United certainly done that. Massive 3 points and a 3-1 win against Southampton. May came now, and it obviously was the end of the season this month. My birthday month as well, 21st it was, and we'll go through that from start to finish. But anyways, first game of the month, Arsenal at home, Newcastle United. The atmosphere before the game was surreal, and we played them off the park. I think Jacob Murphy hit the post in the first 2 minutes or something, and then that big penalty shout. I still think it's a penalty to this day. I think the ball has hit his hand. Like, I can't see it hitting his thigh. But maybe I'm just fucking off me nut. I don't know. But Newcastle United lost 2-0 that day. Odegaard scored an own goal by Fabian Schär. It was a disappointing one, but we performed, and it was like, right, they're going for the top of the league to win the fucker. Do you know what I mean? It was one of them games. We had a massive one the week later though. Ellen Road, early kick-off. Leeds versus Newcastle. It was a frustrating game. Like, I think that game would have done it. I think after the result, after the Arsenal game, we all knew. No, it was after the Leeds game. So I'll speak about the Leeds game first. Newcastle United 2-2. We went 1-0 down in the first 10 minutes, and then Nick Pope saved a penalty. 2 minutes later, Newcastle score a penalty, score in the second half for Callum Wilson with another penalty, and then a deflection goal by Christensen with Trippier bouncing off his noggin. But there's no way you could do. Newcastle United 2-2, and I think results went our way that weekend. And after that weekend, we all knew if Newcastle United won 2 games out of the last 3, Champions League was guaranteed. No matter whatever result happened, was guaranteed. Brighton at home, it was a beautiful week for me. It was my birthday on the Wednesday, my 21st. I spent it in Durham. It was unreal. It was fucking brilliant. Knowing that I was waking up, being like, the Toon play. I wasn't in work and whatnot. The Toon play, massive game against Brighton. I was nervous, but my favourite game of the season. It really was. That ending. And I've got to do a counter the second time I've ever cried at a football game when Bruno put that ball in the back of the net. A tear came to my eye. It was so unreal, wasn't it? But start of the game, Undav own goal, beautiful stuff. Boys are happy, and then Dan Burn just before half time, a beautiful header against his former team. Celebrate as well. Love that big Dan Burn. His first Premier League goal for Newcastle. I was going to say his career, but he scored one, a couple for Brighton. But second half, Undav scored, and then towards the end of the game, it was so nervous knowing that we had to win that game. And Almond was Almond's best performance in the Toon shirt. Skip past Cruzeiro, plays Wilson in, and I'm sitting there recording, going, please score. This will pretty much guarantee us Champions League football. Callum Wilson puts it home, and it was just so unreal. Not expecting 1 minute later for Bruno to get into the action, back in the net, and I've seen nothing like this. Tears came to the eyes. It was unreal. Then Newcastle's next game was Monday night, and we knew if we drew after Liverpool drew 1-1 with Aston Villa at Anfield, a draw would secure Champions League football. And I've got nothing really to say about the game, apart from a 92nd minute save by Nick Pope secured Newcastle United Champions League football. We've done it. Champions League football is here. I will play the anthem now, but copyright in that. Unreal. Because for me it was like, in that moment, look at the boys going round. 2 years ago I was screaming at Steve Bruce, and 2 years later Newcastle United got Champions League football. Like, from winning 2 games in 22, hoping Fulham would not win, to securing Champions League football. It was surreal. It was absolutely surreal. And you can praise all the players, you can praise everyone, right? But Eddie Howe does not get the credit he deserves. Getting a team from 11 games in the season, 5 draws, 6 defeats, sat there 19th. He's got them up to 11th and then top 4 in 18 months. Unreal. Like, it doesn't get spoken about enough in my opinion. He has transformed this football club for the very best, and Newcastle United secured Champions League football on that day. And then off the season with a nice 1-1 draw against Chelsea. I was going to do a video for it, but it was bank holiday that weekend. We played on the Sunday. I was more interested in watching the Everton game, to be honest, and looking at the relegation battle and whatnot. But I had the boys round, all had drinks here, sat here, getting more, but that's why I didn't do a video, because it just wasn't the right time. And there we go, boys. The season is done. 2022-2023 season has been completed. Roller coaster of a ride. So many emotions. But Newcastle United will be playing Champions League football next season. The kit, I'm recording it, I don't know when this video will actually go out. I'm recording this Saturday, the 10th of June. I'm going to try and do it as much as I can, but the amount of work that I've put in this video, the amount of thought and how I'm going to do it, it's took so long. So please appreciate the support, please appreciate the effort I've put in. If you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, it would mean the absolute world. That is the end, boys. I am absolutely sweating. This top is tight as fuck. It's boiling in Geordie land at the minute. I've got a massive light on there. Poor I'm sweating, but hopefully I'll be sweating when we go out to Madrid. See you in the next one, boys. Have a good one and bring on next season. How are the lads?